All right, people, let's take a look at the base design controls in the focus design options. And before we dig into this, I just want to, I'm trying to sprinkle in some insights into these instructional videos, just some other stuff that's maybe not exactly about this, this topic itself, not necessarily about the design options, but about the larger focus and thesis environments that you're going to be working with. And one thing I want to show you quickly is how the menus are structured for quick access to everything you might want to get to. So we are looking at the home screen for all of your controls. You've got site-wide stuff like Google Analytics down here, and you've got skin-specific stuff such as your design options up here. Now we're going to go into the design options, but you don't have to be on the home screen to access this stuff. From anywhere in your WordPress environment, you can use this the thesis menu on the left. You can access content, design options, all this stuff. And then also from anywhere inside the thesis admin, you can use the top menu, skin, design, for example, to get to these same locations. So in case it wasn't clear, you do not have to be on the home screen to navigate to any of these things. You just need to know what your options are in the various environments you're in inside the WordPress admin. So anyway, let's hop into the design options. And like I said, we're going to look at the base layout settings. That is actually these first three items here. They're each prefixed with base, so they're easy to spot: base fonts, colors and styles, and then layout dimensions. So we are going to start with fonts, and this stuff's pretty self-explanatory. If you just load up Focus on a website, you're going to have size 18 font for your main text, and then all the other sizes are going to be calculated based off of that initial font size. So none of these other font sizes, this is not something that you would just go through and, okay, I changed my main font size, now I have to go through and change my headline sizes also. No. That is not how Focus works. Focus calculates everything in your design based on these base variables that you set. So you don't have to go in and adjust stuff, adjust various specific items after making one big adjustment like changing your font size. Focus will smartly adjust everything else in your layout that needs to be adjusted to accommodate the changes that you make, which is super handy and super awesome. So we'll look at this. I'll just a little demonstration here. We'll bump that primary font size up to 22, and we'll take a look. And there we go. So everything has been adjusted to maintain the exact same proportional relationships as we had at 18 pixel font size, but now in this new environment with a 22 pixel font size base, everything has been adjusted to maintain that exact same proportionality. Pretty sweet. So here's what you really need to know about these design options though. So you'll notice here we've got these red kind of cryptic sort of values prefixed by a $. What those are variable references. Now, they aren't useful on this screen. You can't do anything with variables on this screen. You can set what their values are, but to actually use them, and the reason I have put these here, this is a convenience for people that want to perform advanced customizations, and also for any developers who want to build things to work with Focus. You can have your customizations tie in very tightly to the Focus environment by making sure that your CSS that you add to the Focus environment references these variables. If you do that, whenever users make changes and they've got this add-on component that you built also, your component can adapt. The styles that go with your component will adapt to the rest of the design, and that is super handy. That way people don't have to add your component and then add all the customizations to make that component look great with their environment. Nope. Focus will do all that stuff automatically as long as you set it up the right way. Now, if you're just an end user and you're just customizing, you have no plans to deal with code now or ever, you don't need to worry about that too much. It will come up maybe, using these variables within your custom CSS. Let's say you add something to your website, maybe an email form or something like that, and you want to make it look, you feel like you need to make some tweaks to make it look exactly right. Well, the way I envision this working in the future, because Focus is so patternized and so well thought out, and because of this environment with these design variables, almost all customization help or support, if you will, is going to come down to sort of being a predictable landscape, a patternized landscape. And what that means for you is that if you say, I want to customize this thing, there is going to be a canned answer for how to do exactly that. And generally speaking, the custom CSS that you use is going to include, that you're going to include for your customizations, that stuff, that CSS is going to include variable references here. So like you might say, you know, how do I change my font? I can't do that. I can't change, you know, based on the options over here on the design page. I didn't see what I needed, but I want to change this specific thing. How do I do that? Those types of answers are going to be very easy to create a very, you know, it's going to be easy for the whole community to create this gigantic catalog of how do I do this? Okay, here's the exact answer for how to do this. And most of those, if the answer is a good answer, it's going to include a variable reference such as this. It's a little bit of deep insight there, a bit of an aside, but you know, this is all stuff we're going to need to know at some point. So back to the fonts, you can set up your font size as we've already done over here, and then you can also set up to 3 fonts that you can reference later in your layout. So this this font that we're seeing is the Mac OS system font called San Francisco. We could change that. We could change it to a Google font. Let's make it Roboto Slab. Where is it? There it is. And then we can set up another font too called, let's use Anonymous Pro, and we'll save it. And then let's see what we got. I changed the font size back to 18, so it's going to get smaller again so we can see more. Okay, so right now everything is rendering in Roboto Slab. That is this font. Obviously this code font is not rendering in Roboto Slab, but everything else is. But we did set that other font, Anonymous Pro, but it is not currently appearing in the layout. Now, the purpose of this video is just to show you how all these base options work, but I'll just get a quick aside. We'll cover this in a later video in much greater detail. But I set up this secondary font here. It's not currently being used. I'll show you how that could be used. For example, we'll go into content elements, and I'm going to say that I want my headlines to be font 2, which will be Anonymous Pro. That font I just selected. So we'll do that, and now the headlines are rendered in Anonymous Pro, and the rest of the fonts are still Roboto Slab, our font number 1. So that's cool. We're just setting up references, and then we, you know, by setting these base variables, we're setting up references, and then we reference those values later when we want to use them. So that's the first section, base fonts. Pretty simple. The next one is base colors and styles. You have basically 2 different color palettes. You have your layout colors, which is stuff like you know, the background here is white. We've got, let's see, we've got these interior content callouts, alerts, notes, and boxes. These utilize some of the colors that are set up in your layout colors. And this is just how the focus defaults are set up. You know, if you are a creative type person, you can use these defaults in any way you want. You set them up here, you will reference them down below. You can radically change the way your focus installation looks just by playing around with these types of things. And it's worth noting that when you are operating in this environment with these design options and these design variables, you can't really screw anything up. You can change everything, but I would consider these to be non-destructive customizations, meaning that if you were to mess with these and change them, even if the results are undesirable in the end, you haven't screwed anything up. You can get back these default settings, no problem. You just can't, you know, you may as well experiment with this to your heart's content because it's not like you're going to mess anything up. You can't do any lasting damage here. So go crazy, you know, throw stuff against the wall, see what sticks, and, you know, gain familiarity with this environment and learn how to become a comfortable operator within it. So once again, with these layout colors, you can set up 6 of them. The focus default only uses 5. and you also have the variable references down below. You have the same sort of environment when you set up text colors. As you can see, I've got a link color, primary text color, accent, and contrast. The link color you see quite a few different places here. And this is the accent color used on the bylines. That's how the focus defaults are set up. You could use your colors however you want, but again, this is how it's set up. And then you got the high contrast color, which we're not going to see in too many places. I'm not actually sure it appears anywhere in the default focus loadout, but if you were to deploy some buttons on your site, like I'll show you. There's buttons at the end on this. This is a default button. It has gray as the basic color, but some of the other button colors are like green, red, yellow, that sort of thing. The green and the green button and the red button use the high contrast text that I've set up here, but just an example of where some of that stuff is used. And then last, under base colors and styles, we have 2 border styles we can set up. Now these are set up as text references, which are sort of codey, but that's because borders in CSS can get a little bit weird. You've got some extended options with those. It's more than just saying, oh, I want a border that's this color. You also have to say, well, how thick do I want that border to be? What style do I want the border? Do I want it to be dots, dashes, double border, single border, that sort of thing? So these inputs are structured to allow for the various possibilities of the way borders can be specified. But like I said, this stuff's all set up for you out of the box with Focus. You don't actually have to do this, but it's here if you want to tinker with this stuff and play around with it. And again, everything that's labeled as a base, you're setting it up as a reference, and then you will refer to it later when you design specific elements in these other options below. So last, under the focus design options, base settings is base layout dimensions. Again, this is pretty simple. You set up the total width. This says on a desktop environment that is large enough to accommodate whatever, this is the widest I'm going to allow the layout to go. So like pictures and text will not occupy a space any wider than what is specified over there. In this case, you are seeing this blue area at the top. That is 1040 pixels wide. That width corresponds to the width that you set over here for the total width. And then the content width is a little bit different. It's more specific. We'll look at this because this is a great example. Content width is this. How wide am I going to allow each line of text to be? What's the maximum width I'll allow? That's what that is essentially. And that is, in this case, 644 pixels wide. Just some, additional insight here, if you will. This is like the way the focus defaults are structured at font size 18 and a content width of 644 pixels. That is set up to be pretty optimal for readability. Now we can pull up the golden ratio typography calculator and see exactly what 18 and 644 with the system font here is going to yield. Actually, this doesn't have system on there, but we can use Roboto and 18 and 644, and let's see. So that gives us approximately 82 characters per line, given what these focus default settings are. And so that's interesting to know. It's interesting to know how many characters per line you've got. Studies show that people really like to start reading. If they're, they just arrive on a web page, what is going to make them want to start reading? They really want to read something that's constrained to about 55 pixels wide. Sorry, 55 characters per line wide. But what we find with 55, that ends up being a pretty narrow column of text. It's nice to use up more space on, if you have a desktop display like this with a lot of screen real estate, you'd like to use up a little more than like a super narrow column of text, which is what you get at 55 characters per line. But what we also know is that people read faster as line lengths get longer, which is interesting. People don't want to read long line lengths, but they do read them faster. Kind of an interesting paradox there. But so what you want to do is you want to strike a balance between readability, using up a decent amount of real estate so the whole design looks pretty good, but also, you don't want to create an environment where the user doesn't want to read. So all these design decisions with the focus default have been made with all of these different considerations in mind. Not sure there's really any other deep insights to give you there, but bottom line is you want to, and well, I guess to set a boundary on the thing, you really want to keep you want your full lines of text, what your content width here is going to dictate. You want that to result in lines of text that are, in my opinion, between 55 and 95 characters per line. I personally have noticed a pretty heavy bias toward wanting to read and feeling like text looks really beautiful. Right in that 75 to 85 characters per line range. I just feel like that really looks right. Everything about the way these designs work out and all that stuff, it all kind of fits when you're in that 75 to 85 characters per line sweet spot. Anyway, moving on, the last base design option we have in focus is horizontal gutters. Now, this is really probably not something anyone except someone who's trying to heavily customize focus is ever going to mess with, but I'll show you what it is anyway. So what this is, gutters are the white space on the left and right edges of the layout. So like this space between the edge of the browser and the word focus here, that white space is known as a gutter. And so you always want to have a gutter, no matter, like if you have a small screen, you never want the text going all the way to the edges of the screen. It's unsightly, and it also is kind of hard to read and track where the beginning of the next line is. So you always want to maintain a gutter just for general usability and readability. But when your screens get really small, you don't want the gutter to be super huge because you really need to use that real estate on a very narrow screen. So Focus gives you two choices here. You can set a desktop gutter width and a mobile gutter width, because like I said, sometimes you want the mobile to be a little smaller. And so what we're seeing here is the desktop gutter width, and then as the layout gets sufficiently small, we now see the mobile gutter width, which again is a little bit smaller. So that's what those things control. Probably not going to be messing with that too much, but now you know exactly what it does. Okay, so that covers the base layout design, the base design options in Focus. And in the next video, I will show you how to apply them to various elements of your design so you can begin your customization journey.